Dear Mrs Chalmers, by Jadishin. Dear Mrs Chalmers, I realise that this letter is reaching you at a very difficult time. I'm not going to claim to know how you feel, not being a parent myself. The worry and constant anxiety you're experiencing must be unbearable. You're probably not sleeping. Every time you close your eyes, I bet the worst possible scenarios play themselves out in your head. Well, allow me to put you at ease once and for all. Your precious little Timothy is completely safe in my care. I must say, he is a remarkable boy. Having seen you on the news, though, I am reasonably certain that it was nothing you did that made him the way he is. You don't seem to have it in you to raise and inspire a child like Timothy. He is truly gifted, and perhaps it was for the best that he wandered away into my sight. Now I'm certain he'll have the chance to reach his full potential. Allow me to explain how Timothy and I met. As you know, it was Halloween night. Ah yes, my favourite night of the year. The night when everyone goes around masquerading as something other than themselves. So many people roaming the streets covered in blood. I don't stand out on Halloween. I don't have to hide. It's the freest I get to be all year. I just killed some filthy whore by a dumpster in an alleyway. Hookers get murdered all the time, often by me, and no one seems to care, even when the news feels like reporting on it. That's what makes it so easy. There's no one to miss them. There's no one to demand justice. This one, though, she was special. She had such a pretty mouth with big, sweet lips, eyes like a damn beanie baby, and the softest, smoothest pair of tits you could ever want. I could tell she was new, young, not yet ruined by the street. Those are my favourite ones. I muffled her screams with one hand during the act, while slicing through her flesh with the knife I held in the other. It's my favourite feeling in the world when they stop fighting, and ever so gradually wind down from high anxiety to a complete stop. Sometimes I swear I can feel their heartbeats weaken and fade and peter out completely. God damn, do I love it so. Once I'd finished her off, I picked her up. Remember, I didn't need to worry about the blood in this particular evening, and chucked her into the first dumpster. She landed on the inside with a louder thud than I expected. But what I expected even less was the gasp I heard in response. Someone was hiding in the dumpster. I'm not too proud to admit that I was scared. I mean, who wants to be caught? I sure as hell don't. You understand, don't you? I had my knife ready just in case I needed to use it again, and slowly crept around to see who this witness was. And there he was, this little boy in a clown costume. He's told me since that he's 10, but damn if I didn't think he was a toddler or something. Bit short for his age, isn't he? That's okay, though. Special comes in all shapes and sizes. Well, I regret it now, but of course I barked at him. I demanded to know what he was doing hiding there behind the dumpster. What he said damn near floored me. Do you know what he said? He said he's been out specifically looking for me. How about that? Naturally, I asked him what the hell he was talking about, and he explained that you and his daddy make him watch the news every night because, in his words, you want him to be smart. Well, let me tell you, you sure did get your wish on that one. He said he's seen a couple news stories about the guy who keeps killing people, and so he wanted to come and find me. He picked Halloween to do it because it was the first time you were letting him go out alone. He knew I mostly went for whores, and even picked up on the kinds of settings where I like to do the deed, which is how he knew to wait for me behind the dumpster in the shitty part of town. See? Smart kid. Of course I asked him why he wanted to find me. Now this, what you're about to read, is extraordinary. Honestly, it chokes me up. I thought I was beyond these kind of feelings, but your boy, your remarkable little boy. Do you know what he said? He said I inspired him. He said my work excited him. He told me his dream was to be just like me, How could I just say no to that? Sure, I'll admit that I was totally prepared to kill him, but I knew when I heard those words and saw the sincerity in those little eyes of his that this was something I just couldn't throw away. And so I've taken little Timmy under my bloody wing, although, of course, he'd hate that I just called him that. You know how he is. He has exceeded every one of my expectations and passed every test I've thrown at him with flying colours. It's amazing how quickly he's earned his first kill. I'll never forget the look on his face as he sliced into that woman's chest. It was the face of pure, unadulterated joy. I've never been so proud. And that's not all. He's been getting better by the day. In fact, he started going out by himself now. That's where he is tonight. I decided to take night off to write you this letter. I can hardly wait for him to get back and tell me about who he managed to find and what he decided to do to them. He's astoundingly creative. So, Mrs. Chalmers, please don't fret. Timothy, as you can see, is completely safe from anyone or anything that might try to harm him. But whether or not they are safe from Timothy, well, that's the question now, isn't it? Sincerely, the guy who keeps killing people. A Halloween Monster by Red Nova Tyrant. Come on, Jackie. Only kids like you have to be brave, 'cause they got no big brothers or sisters to protect them. Daddy's words repeated in my head. I swallowed before trying again. My feet shook as they made their way up the creaky wooden steps. A layer of fog rolled and twirled around my legs, illuminated by orange lights that shone from fires held within devils' faces. One step howled loudly, catching me off guard and forcing me to hurry back down to the safety of the stone path. Though it wasn't too much better down here. There were wispy skeletons moving around, and when one reached for me, I hurried back to the steps. This time, my climb was greeted by a door opening. There was no bright, welcoming light that rushed to escape into the night. Rather, only tiny little bulbs of purple and green and orange shone within the darkness, and nothing more. Only when the shadow hurried forth did I scream and stumble back yet again, my suspense broken by the approaching figure. "Well, hello there," the creature spoke. My lip quivered and I was unable to respond. Its pale white face shook me deeply, standing out entirely on its own from the large black cloak it wore. "What do you say?" was all I could muster before running from the house. A pair of arms interrupted my escape, quickly grabbing my fairy princess dress and hoisting me upwards. "Oh, there, Jacqueline," Uncle Hugh whispered, rubbing my back slowly as I cried out. Tears ran down my face for the millionth time tonight, ruining any makeup my mummy put on me. Uncle Hugh then did something that made me freeze up in terror. He called out to the monster. "Do you think you could come out here? She's a little frightened." My heart started to race rapidly as I heard the footsteps clicking along the pathway behind me. I thrust my eyes into my uncle's shoulder, trying to hide from the beast, but when he told me to look, I was turned around to meet it once more. My cries echoed through the neighborhood once again as the monster laughed, its pearly white fangs matching perfectly with its face. "Oh, I'm sorry, dearie. Here, have some extra candy for being such a brave girl." The monster then stretched out the opening of my bag and dumped in 2 big chocolate bars and a bag of crisps. "What do you say, Jackie?" "Thank you," I mumbled before hiding my face. I knew the candy was free, but having to approach these terrifying monsters to get it was too much. At least there were only a few houses left. Uncle Hugh set me down beside the car and opened the door for me to get in. Daddy was sleeping in the back seat. I couldn't wait to show him all the candy I'd gotten when he woke up. Uncle Hugh told me not to disturb him right now, though, or else he might get angry. After I was buckled in, the car started to move.
I began thinking about what Daddy told me about being brave. It seemed odd now, considering Uncle Hugh was here taking me out trick-or-treating. After all, I always thought Daddy told me that phrase because he was an only child too.
Movie buff. I can see him out there. I know his name. Helpless, unsuspecting 20-something, having a quiet night while the folks are out of town. Sits down to watch the scary movie. The setup is just too perfect. The only chance I've got is getting the first strike in. I'm not fucking going down like some two-dimensional aging star trying to pretend they're a teenager. Tools. What have I got? Enough, I hope. A quick check to make sure he's still there. Yeah, he's going nowhere. I can see the mask and flowing black. Scream. The film about avoiding film cliches. And here I found one stood right in front of me. The only thing between us is a door. I'm sure he can hear my labored breathing. My not as light as I'd like footsteps. He rings the doorbell. Bastard, trying to catch me unaware. I don't fucking think so. I can just about make his knife out. Clutched in close to his robe. It looks dull, tarnished. I'd call it lifeless, but it feels too much like an omen. I edge my way back to the kitchen. The closest thing we've got to a weapon is the assortment of cooking knives. Fine, if it's a knife fight, then I'm going to make the first lunge. I compose myself for a minute, breathing some of the ash from my lungs before stepping back into the living room so I can make my way to the door. He's at the window. Game over. It's now or never. The police never get here in time. The knife is in my hand. Its weight isn't nearly as reassuring as I'd hoped it would be. The handle is moist in my sweaty palm, and I'm trembling so much I think I'll drop it from behind my back and give the game away. My heart is practically through my ribcage as I reach for the door. No fear. If you're going down, go down fighting. I wonder if this is how every man felt on point when breaching a room. How the brave souls of D-Day felt as they climbed into their boats. Death. Palpable, real, with a face. I twisted the lock. The door swings freely with a push. I taste the air. Tr! He stops. The knife. I've never felt anything like it. The snag as it first hit. The grate as it connected with bone. The touch of the robe as my hand finished driving home my defense, my salvation. It was over. It took a few seconds for any reaction. I didn't know if it was enough. I stared back at those black holes which should hold eyes and saw nothing. Everything in me wanted to burst. He sways, a groan comes from behind the mask. I smell blood as he falls. I stand, trying to will the life back into my limbs. This is the part where they catch you. Dead? Sure. Dead just long enough for you to get your guard down. I drag him to the chopping block around back and make sure he's not coming back. It's all over. I get back inside and wash up. I cry, and cry a lot. It feels like I've just been lifted from hell. Jesus wrapping a hand around my wrist when I most needed it. I've never been the religious type. Maybe it's time that changed. My heart drops. Right back down into the pit from where I was just lifted. There's a knock at the door. The doorbell ringing. I peer outside and see a group of children and teens dressed as farmers. One looks like a priest. Stephen King. Children of the Corn. Religious fanatics haunted by a bastardized deity roaming the field. 5 of them. Well, there may be more of them, but that means nothing. I've done this once. It's time for the sequel. I twist the lock. The door swings freely with a push. I taste the air. Trick or treat! Yeah, I'm not falling for that one. Cold shivers. by Hopeless Night Owl.
This happened decades ago, when I was in middle school, or junior high as they liked to call it back then. I understand if you're skeptical, but respectfully, I'm not really interested in having a logical debate about the merits of my story. At the end of the day, either you're someone who believes in this type of thing, or you're not. It was the beginning of October, and my friend Kyle and I spent several hours going through one of those local haunted corn maze attractions. The first few times we had the time of our lives, but by the 5th or 6th time through it, it was starting to get old. We thought about switching to another haunted attraction in the area, but Kyle had another idea. He said we should sneak into the maze at a local botanical garden. We were both latchkey kids who were into trespassing for fun, so I didn't have any ethical problems. But I didn't see the point in it. That's when he told me about a being called the Clipper.
The Clipper, like garden clippers? I gotta say, that's pretty lame. What's next? Are you gonna take me to the cemetery so we can look for a shovel?
I scoffed. You're laughing now, but I heard he stalks the maze at night and kills anyone he catches in the maze after hours. They say he carries a big pair of clippers just to torture his victims.
Just who are they? And how do they know any of this? Wouldn't it have been in the news if it even happened once? Where does he go when it's not nighttime? What about when they let people into the garden at night for Halloween and Christmas? Where is he then? We did this dance back and forth, but Kyle convinced me to go. I didn't have anything better to do that night, and we had all October to go to the haunted houses. The Botanical Gardens was close enough for us to walk there. I've never honestly expected to find the Clipper. Kyle was actually quite smart, but he was kind of stupid in other ways. I suspected that somebody at school preyed on his gullibility by telling him this ridiculous story of a slasher who stalks the maze. As cliché as it may sound, we got over the fence by climbing a tree. We were in luck. The maze was nearby. It was a fairly warm night. We barely even needed our long-sleeve shirts. I was more concerned about being caught trespassing than encountering any sort of supernatural being. Although it wouldn't be the first time. If this Clipper fellow was hiding in the maze, it wouldn't take us long to find him. It was way smaller than the corn maze. Look up pictures of botanical garden hedge mazes. This maze wasn't any bigger than those. But still, it was honestly kinda nice being there after dark. The maze was very well kept, with nary a twig or leaf visible on the path. The full or almost full moon gave a very tranquil atmosphere. We saw a barn owl bathing in the fountain that served as the centerpiece of the maze before seeing us and flying off, which was pretty cool. We also found a snake crossing one of the narrow pathways. Even if there was no slasher monster around, it was interesting to see how the place could come alive at night in its own small ways. I did feel a slight cold shiver a few times, but I didn't pay it any mind. We walked the maze several times over, keeping our voices hushed, just in case there was security around. Maybe an hour in, I suggested exploring the rest of the garden. But Kyle had to piss. Just go in the fountain, I told him, referring to the collection pool at the base of the fountain. He thought it was gross, so he opted to go out in the hedges instead. Well, we've been over this maze a bunch of times and no sign of the Clipper, I said when he was finished. I say we go check the rest of the place out. We were just about to do so when we saw him. The Clipper, for who else could it be, merely took a small step from where he was standing to reveal his presence. I'm going with he, had been standing there the whole time. But we didn't notice him until he moved. He just blended in with the maze, I guess. He was tall, taller than the maze itself, and slender and cloaked in green robes that covered his body head to toe. I assume he had hands, because he was holding a pair of big, menacing, almost comically oversized pruning shears. I'm pretty sure I always got that slight chill feeling whenever we were at the same spot at the fountain. How'd we missed him? The Clipper made no noise as he began to walk towards us. He didn't stagger like monsters in the movies. His gait was perfect, even graceful. Needless to say, we weren't looking for any reason to stick around. Like I said, the maze was small, So we made it out in seconds, but we didn't stop running till we were back over the garden fence. I looked back and the clipper was standing there at the mouth of the maze, facing our direction, before turning around and walking back into it. You may have several questions about this. How could we fail to notice the clipper in such a small maze when he was taller than the hedges? Where did he go during the day? How had no one else ever discovered him? How could he be real when my friend or someone else he knew more or less made him up? Well, as the kids are fond of saying, I got nothing. Like I said in the beginning, it's your choice if you want to believe me or not, but I stand by my story. If you follow magical thinking philosophy, maybe Kyle's own belief in the clipper somehow made him real. But he definitely was real in that moment, not just a figment of our imagination. I actually went back to the maze later as an adult, during the day, of course. There was no sign of the clipper, but I never once doubted the reality of what Kyle and I experienced. One lingering side effect of our little adventure was that haunted house and corn mazes lost their appeal to us. They just suddenly failed to deliver the adrenaline rush we were after. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. And if you're an animal lover like me, please consider donating to the World Land Trust, a charity that aims to help wildlife through buying land, preventing development, and helping endangered species.